Mahatma Gandhi said, "If you want to change the world, start with yourself." We are then confronted with our inner reality. This is when we may realize that we have no idea how we can do this. What does Gandhi mean by start with yourself? What should I do? Who will show me the way? And where will this take me? During this contemplative meeting of the Golden Rosy Cross on the topic of meditation, perhaps a question resonates in you. Do the pupils of the Golden Rosy Cross meditate? Or, more to the point, can you show me how to meditate effectively? Of course, this depends on what we are trying to achieve with meditation. In fact, addressing this key question takes us to the very essence of why meditative practices may not be fulfilling our spiritual needs, nor soothing our mind and body to the extent we would like, and therefore to the practical reality of walking the Gnostic path. For an answer, we wish to read an extract from The Voice of the Silence, written by Helena Blavatsky. Having become indifferent to objects of perception, the pupil must seek out the Raja of the senses, the thought producer, he who awakes illusion. The mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. For when to himself his form appears unreal, as do on waking all the forms he sees in dreams, when he has ceased to hear the many, he may discern the one, the inner sound which kills the outer. Then only, not till then, shall he forsake the region of Asat, the false, to come unto the realm of Sat, the true.
We just read, in the voice of the silence, the mind is the great slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. This seems to be a counterintuitive proposition. After all, why would we not want to overcome the chaos of the mind? However, the reality is that by using meditative practices to attain this goal, we are expecting the mind to attain something it cannot. We are expecting the mind, which Blavatsky calls the slayer of the real, to bring us to the enlightenment of the real. Such an expectation is a delusion, because it does not recognize the distinction between the unreal and the real, between the mind and the disciple, between the self of matter and the self of spirit. Here we are speaking of two distinct nature orders, two distinct states of being and not being. The one, the real, the realm of Sat, which is the realm of the perfect, eternal, unchanging state of divine totality. The other is the multifold, the unreal, Asat, which is an imperfect, transient, constantly alternating state of manifestation. What we are trying to achieve with our seeking, whether we recognize it yet or not, what our inner longing is yearning for, is an inner peace, not just a momentary impulse, but as a new state of life. Or, to paraphrase the voice of the silence, when we have recognized the unreality of our present form, when we have ceased to hear the many, only then are we able to discern the one, the inner sound which kills the outer. When we refer to the mind as the slayer of the real, it indicates to us the essence of our problem, the problem with thinking that the mind of the personality holds the key to answering questions that are coming from the reawakening heart, indeed from the inner other one. This is why we hear from the voice of the silence. The self of matter and the self of spirit can never meet. One of the two must disappear. There is no place for both. Before your soul's mind can understand, the bud of personality must be crushed out. The worm of sense destroyed past resurrection. You cannot travel on the path before you have become that path itself.
Now to the question: do the pupils of the Golden Rosy Cross meditate? The reason pupils of the Golden Rosy Cross don't do meditation exercises, why we don't use the mind to control our thoughts, is simply because it does not work. At least, not to reignite the spirit spark within us into the fire of life. And certainly not to bring about the inner peace of this new state of life. To truly understand this, let us examine how meditative exercises work in practice. The mind could be described as a continuous flow of thoughts. If we compared this flow to a rushing river, what would be the consequence of holding the river back with a dam? Well, eventually the water would break the dam or pass over it, or, if it were raised higher, it would cause flooded areas upstream. This is what happens with meditative practices and any other forced behaviors in relation to the mind. These practices only reinforce our aural being, the energy that in fact controls the ego totally, when the energy field above the pineal fiery circle is flooded with our pent-up thoughts. Or they exacerbate our blood and karma, the subconscious and unconscious fields of our feelings and reactions that are flooded when the dam of thoughts bursts. And all this happens because the conscious self, with its focus on the mind, is trying to force itself into becoming something that it is not. The real self, the omniconscious self, that lies above and beyond the common mind. Again, we refer to the voice of the silence. Strive with your thoughts unclean before they overpower you. Use them as they will you, for if you spare them and they take root and grow, know well, these thoughts will overpower and kill you. Beware, disciple, suffer not, even though it be their shadow to approach, for it will grow, increase in size and power, and then this thing of darkness will absorb your being, before you have well realized the black monster's presence. Before the mystic power, the kundalini of the heart, can make of you a god, Lanu, you must have gained the faculty to slay your lunar form at will.
Let us heed well this warning from the voice of the silence. If we allow the mind to cultivate itself, it grows, increasing in size and power. And it does so to the detriment of the real, the soul, the self of spirit. Why? Because the self of matter and the self of spirit can never meet. If we insist that the mind must increase, then inevitably we are insisting the spirit must decrease. For one of the two must disappear. There is no place for both. What is of time and space cannot attain perfection, because it is transient, constantly changing into its opposite. And the divine, the abstract, the absolute, cannot take on imperfection, because it is timeless and unchanging. The self of matter can only perceive matter. So, if the mind creates an image of perfection, of eternity, it is just that, an image, an illusion of the real. Beyond the wisdom of the mind, which struggles with its own images to retain the knowledge of the truth, there is the truth itself, which is already within your very being. This one truth, the divine spirit spark within you, will set you free. And therein lies the key to the Gnostic path. Let the disciple, the divine spirit spark within you, slay or break free from the slayer, the torrent of thoughts that overwhelm us and drown out the real self, the universal consciousness. We do not meditate to suppress our present state of consciousness or to elevate ourselves into a higher state of consciousness. Nor do we need to improve the lower self to emulate the higher self. We do not need to create the real self or free it with our mind. Nor does the real self need to train our lower self in order to exist. The real self does not depend on us to exist, or on whether we think this way or that, or whether our mind is noisy or not. The real self, the higher self, already is. It always has been, and it always will be. It cannot be otherwise. And the real, the inner other one, the universal consciousness, is already within us. We just have to let it be, to let it manifest in us and through us.
One question remains. Can you show me how to meditate effectively? Indeed, after what we have discussed, how do we, as pupils of the Gnostic path, allow the voice of the silence to speak within us? We let the disciple slay the slayer of the real. In our moments of silence and contemplation, rather than suppressing or blocking the thoughts that come naturally to the mind, we simply observe our thoughts, feelings, and actions. We do not fight them, but strive to follow the advice just given and ask, where do these thoughts come from? What do they want of me? Where are they taking me? For only in this way can we obtain self-knowledge. Only then we can come to understand the forces that are working within us. And only then do we, armed with this self-knowledge and objectivity, have the opportunity to choose not to feed them, not to suppress them, but to just let them go. Then our meditation becomes a sevenfold formula for the renewal of both our head and our heart, in which you, as a pupil of the spiritual school, firstly, observe your emotions. Secondly, observe your thoughts. Thirdly, observe the working of your will. Fourthly, examine whether they are in harmony with the resonance of the inner voice of the heart. Fifthly, whatever your conclusion, do not force a counteraction with emotions, thoughts, or will. Only observe objectively. It is essential to obtain self-knowledge. Try to descend into the sources of the subconsciousness. Sixthly, as soon as you obtain results, drive back all anxiety, worry, and fear. Let the truth breathe through you and be still in great peace. See yourself as if standing on a balance. Note the positive and the negative, the subjective as well as the objective. Seventhly, now enter the reality and speak the formula. Your will be done. Let the radiations of the three mysteries within you thus vibrate through you, and gain power over you. In this way you will realize the latent new possibilities in your blood and make the lesser circulation of the blood receptive to the gnosis. The window of the soul opens. In this way, the unification of the head and the heart will take place. The new consciousness is born. Well, friends, we wholeheartedly hope that not only your mind will understand these things, but also that you will have the heartfelt courage to take the decisive step towards realizing this true meditation within you. That you will allow the wisdom of the heart to work within you and let the one truth become the master of your mind.